And we're live, believe it or not. Whew. Talk about hectic. We set this up in like 10 minutes. So we are out of breath and ready to go, I guess. We'll see. Hopefully, it was a little easier for people to find the live stream. We set it up with the countdown timer so that the stream was actually live a little bit before we started. So hopefully, that makes things a little bit easier for people to find. We shall see. We'll get some feedback on that. So today's live stream, we're going to talk about online assessments. And I'm going to talk about two different options. There's a bunch of different ways you can go about doing different assessments. But two of the popular ones are using Skyward and Google Forms. And I've used both of those, and there's advantages and disadvantages for each. So I'll go over some of those and walk you through the basics of how to set them up. I do not intend this to be a comprehensive how-to for Skyward assessments and Google Forms assessments, or even Google Classroom, but hopefully it gives you enough to get started. I like to say, hopefully you'll know enough to be dangerous once we get through this. So let's get started with a comparison here between Skyward and Google Forms. You can do assessments in Skyward. It works reasonably well. It's got, again, some advantages and disadvantages. For example, in Skyward, you can have it automatically put the scores straight into the gradebook. There is not another tool out there that can do that. Any other tool that you use, whether it's Google Forms or Edpuzzle or literally anything else that's out there, you're going to have to put the scores into Skyward yourself, which isn't a huge deal, but it is a nice feature in Skyward. I have found when I use Skyward tests, Skyward assessments, that students really like that instant feedback. They see the score in the grade book and they see the effect it has on their grade right away. And literally as soon as they click submit, it's there. They kind of like that. So that's one advantage for Skyward. Forms can't put that score straight in the grade book. So there's that. Skyward, you can make templates and you can share those with other staff members. I'll show you real quickly how to do that in just a few minutes. But it's not nearly as straightforward and easy to share things like it is with a Google form in Google Drive. So you can do it, but it's not as easy. Let's see, what else? Skyward has a built-in equation editor. Google Forms does not. Google Forms does have an extension, though, an add-on that you can hook in there, and it will do equations for you. Neither one of them is all that great. If you're familiar with the equation editor in like Microsoft Word or Google Docs, those are much better. There's some other paid-for equation editors that you can get for add-ons for like Microsoft Word that are much better, but at least you can do some basic math equation kind of stuff if you need to put that into your assessments. Google Forms can do a locked quiz. What that means is when the students sign into the assessment, they are locked into that screen, similar to the state testing security stuff, where when they log in on their Chromebook or their iPad, they are locked into that test until they finish. They can't go open another web browser or go into their Google Drive and open documents or notes or anything like that. They are locked into just that screen until they finish the assessment. So Google Forms has that ability, at least on the Chromebooks. Let me back up. I do not believe that locked quizzes works if you're not on a Chromebook. So if you're a school that has iPads, you can still use a Google Form for an assessment, but I do not believe that students are locked into it like they are on a Chromebook. Let's see. During an assessment in Skyward, you can see student progress. You can't necessarily see what their answers are as they're going along, but you can see how many questions they've answered and how many they have left. In an in-class situation, I found this to be really useful because you've got that student that doesn't look like they're really making much progress. They're kind of staring out the window or something like that, or maybe they got their head down or something like that, and you're not really sure where they're at on the test. Well, with Skyward, you can see where they're at on the test and how far they've got left to go. You can't get that kind of information with Google Forms. Google Forms will tell you when they're done, but it won't tell you how far along they are in the process. So again, advantages and disadvantages to each. One isn't necessarily better than the other, but one might fit your needs a little bit better than another one. So let me check chat real quick. Doesn't look like anybody has any questions yet. Feel free to put questions into the chat there. I'll check with them. My able-bodied assistant here will keep an eye on the chat as well as we go along. We'll try to answer those questions as we go along. But I want to first go into Skyward. If you'll switch over to my Skyward screen. Again, this, as I mentioned before when I've done this, this is a training database, and so all the data here is like scrambled stuff, and none of it pertains to any of our students in the district, so there's no privacy issues here with me showing this on the video. But to begin with, let me check my notes. So to begin with, to get into an assessment in Skyward, there's a couple of different ways you can do it, and in either case, you're going to want to start out by going to a gradebook for at least one of your classes, in particular the class you want to make the assessment for. So I'm going to pick a class here, and in the gradebook, I've got a couple of options. One is I can make an assignment. So if I go to assignments, the assignments pull down here, the third pull down over from the left, and I go to add assignment, and it gives me a new blank assignment. You're probably familiar with what this normally looks like. Over here on the right-hand side, there's a button. Let me make this a little bit bigger for people. There's a button here for options and create online assignment. If you go this route to making an online assessment, it will be tied to this particular assignment, which may be fine, but you need to know that you will not be able to use this for other assignments. Let's suppose you come to the same part of your course the next school year, and you want to use that same assignment, that same assessment. You're going to have to either recreate it or figure something else out because it doesn't carry over from year to year. I don't like making assessments this way unless I know for sure it's just a quick and easy, like I need to ask them a survey kind of question or a quick exit question or something like that I'm not necessarily going to use again. But this is one option to getting into making a Skyward assessment. Once you get past this point, both methods are essentially the same looking, so I'm not going to go any farther on this one. But if you did click Create Online Assignment, it would look just like the other way, which is I'm going to go back to right now. So I'm going to go back to the gradebook. And from the gradebook, if you go over here to this other access, the first pull down on the left, down at the bottom it says Online Assignment Templates. So if we make a template, that template will stay there year after year after year, and you can go back to it. You can edit it. You can reassign it to multiple classes, all kinds of good stuff. So I've always made my assessments through the template. If I'm going to use a Skyward assessment, I always do it as a template. One more advantage of doing it as a template, you can share that with other teachers. So if you have, say, a class period of Algebra 1 and the other Algebra 1 teacher wants to also give that assessment, you can share that assessment with them, and they don't have to recreate the wheel. They can use your assessment. So that is an advantage to making it as a template as well. So once I click on Online Assignment Templates, get this list of all the assessments that have been made. Somebody has made all kinds of AP vocabulary, AP, anyway, assessments. Looks like an AP English class. If I go over here on the right, I've got some buttons. I can add a new one. I can edit a current one that's there. I can delete one and get rid of it. I can clone it, which means I can make a copy, and then I can mess with the copy without messing with the original. That's helpful. And then you can get some reports about the assessment. I'm going to go ahead and go to the Add button here, and it brings up this screen. This is where you make the assessment. You can put in your questions and whatnot. So you can give it a name, make up a name there. You can give it an added description. Maybe this is some instructions, some other information so that you know what the assessment is when you look at it later. Couple of check boxes here. Randomized questions. In an in-class situation, I highly recommend using the randomized questions checkbox there. This kind of prevents or discourages the I'm looking over at my neighbor's screen kind of situation to see what the answer is to number 3. So that's helpful. In an online, purely online situation where you've got, students sitting at home doing this, I don't know if it's as critical, but it couldn't hurt. And then there's another checkbox that says do not allow other teachers to clone. If you didn't want to share it, you could check that. Down here where it says family student access. So questions per page. It's helpful not to have too many questions on one page. You can put you could have 100 questions in an assessment and you could put them all on one page and they would just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. It's kind of annoying. Most people don't like that type of a situation. Students kind of get stressed when they feel like there's a really, really long test that way. So I would recommend somewhere between 5 and maybe 10 questions on a page. Kind of depends on the types of questions. If you're doing, longer response kind of questions, I would lean more towards the maybe even 3 to 5 questions on a page. Sometimes it's helpful to group them. If you have a single prompt and then 2 or 3 questions about them, you could group them in that fashion so they only show up, those questions on a given page. So pick an appropriate number. If I'm doing all multiple choice, it's probably 10 questions per page. If I'm doing short response or essay kind of questions, maybe 3, 4, 5 on a page. These other 2 checkboxes control what shows up after the test is submitted. So show correct answers. Do you want the students to be able to see the correct answers to the questions after they've submitted it or not? And then the auto grade and post to gradebook. Honestly, if I'm going to use Skyward, the main reason I'm using it is because it'll go straight into Skyward. And so I'm not sure why I wouldn't check that grade, that box right there, that auto grade box. But if for some reason you wanted to have that wait until everybody's done or until a day later or until you've had a chance to look at them, all your options. But if you forget to auto check that, then you'll be kind of disappointed because you have to go through and post them by hand. Again, not the end of the world, but it's an extra step. So anyway, once you've filled out those top things there, over here on the right is a big button that says Save and Add Questions. If you click on that, it takes you to this screen, which is where you start adding your questions. Let me pause for a moment and check that we're doing all right. I don't see any burning questions in the chat stream, so. Oh, my tech guy's telling me to fix the date because it's not 4/1. Today is the 8th. Okay. He feels better now. I think Jason was worried about that too, so you're all better now, Jason. All right, so once you get into this part and you're going to enter your questions, you've got a few different options for types of questions. You got 5 different choices here: multiple choice, true, false, matching, short answer, and essay questions. The multiple choice, true, false, and matching will auto grade if you wish. The short answer and essay will not. So you can have a mixture of them. You could have like a few multiple choice questions and then an essay, a longer response question. You can have it auto grade the multiple choice parts and then save the essay part for you to go through and grade separately. So you can do a mix, or you can do all multiple choice or all true false, or however you want to do it. It will mix and match. This points for this question, you can adjust the number of points for this particular question. So you can weight questions. You could have the essay question be worth 5 points and the multiple choice questions are all worth a point apiece, for example. So those are options. In the question box here, you can You can just type away at your question, but you also have this style toolbar here that you can pull down, and you can do basically what you can do in a Google Doc or a Word document. You can change the fonts, you can change the font size, you can bold, underline, all that kind of stuff, make bulleted lists and whatnot. Here is that equation editor that I promised. Again, it gives you kind of rudimentary equation editing stuff. I wouldn't really want to do a whole lot of math here, but if you needed to show a quick equation or something like that, it works reasonably well. You can also insert an image with that button there, which might be helpful to show a diagram or something you're referencing. Once you have your question all in, down here you have your different answers. If this is multiple choice, you've got multiple choice answers. You don't have to fill in all the boxes. It'll only show the ones you actually type an answer in. So if I have 3 choices in a multiple choice, that's all I got to do for filling in answers. I don't have to like delete the other letters D, E, F, H, whatever there. But you do need to make sure you choose a correct answer. I cannot tell you how many times I have made an assessment. I have forgotten on a question somewhere to mark a correct answer. And once it gets graded, a student points out, hey, this was goofed. And then I got to go back in and fix it all. It is possible to fix it afterwards and have it rescore everything, but it's kind of a pain, and you don't want to do that. So really important to make sure you check the checkbox for the correct answer on each question. So that's kind of what like multiple choice looks like. True false is pretty similar, except down here on the bottom, all you have is an option between true and false. Matching, you get choices on one side and matches on the other. Again, pretty straightforward. With short answer, oh, you can give it correct answer. So here's a caution. It can grade short answer. When I've done short answer before, I don't have it grade short answer because it has to match exactly. So if a student slightly misspells the name of a person that's an answer, like if the correct answer is Isaac Newton and they slightly misspell Isaac, or they forget to capitalize the N in Newton, it won't match it. So I don't like to have even the short answer stuff be auto scored. So, but it'll do it. You can give it multiple different versions of correct answers there. Personally, I haven't liked that. And then the essay answers, they'll just get a box to type in their answer in. And again, it works reasonably well. I would not use it if I was like an English teacher and I wanted my students to write an essay. The editing tools, as far as font size and different font choices and line spacing and all that stuff, they don't get all that. All they get is a box to type in. So I would not have students submit an essay that way. But a little bit longer response, a couple of sentences explaining a concept or something, works pretty well there. Any case, once you've got that question, you can click Save and Back if you're all done putting in questions, or you can save and add another question, and it'll take you right to the next question box to go along with it. So I'm going to go back at this point, and I'm going to close that without saving. Go back one more. My list of templates that's here, I'm going to open one up so that you can see what that list of questions looks like. So I'm going to go to Edit over here on the right-hand side. And here you can see that screen. Now there's a whole bunch of questions here. And you can see that they're multiple choice. Here's some true false questions. If you click the little arrows over here on the left, it'll give you some more detail about what the multiple choice answers are, whether or not you've chosen a correct answer. So this is not a bad way to go through and make sure that you have correct answers for each one. So just click that little arrow and you can see this one's a matching one. So there's not one correct answer, but like on the true false, there's true, there's a correct answer, right? All the way through. Make sure you've got correct answers marked. All right, let me pause again and check for questions. Doesn't look like it. I must be doing a great job, or there's nobody watching. I'm not sure which. Either way, it's safe. All right, let me check and see if I've missed anything. Style toolbar, answer section. Just a reminder, if you do make a goof, like you mark the wrong correct answer on a question, you can go back and have it make that correction in it and rescore everything. But it's an after the fact kind of thing. You can't do it while they're taking the test. You do it after they've taken the test, and it'll rescore and resubmit it into the gradebook. It is kind of painful, but you can do it. Reporting. Skyward does have some reporting that you can do in terms of getting statistics on how your students have done, which questions they missed the most, or which ones everybody got right, that kind of thing. It's not very robust. It's not very flexible as to what information you can get, but it's there. So it's okay, but it's not great. Google Forms, I think, wins in that category, and I'll show you where you can look for that when we do Google Forms here in just a minute. Google Forms definitely does a better job at gathering that data and showing it to you in a way that's useful. All right, so let's move on to Google Forms. Let me open up a form, a blank form here. Let's use this one. All right, so if you'll pop that up on the screen there for me, Marcus. So this is a Google form on the editing side. I think most people have probably played around a little bit with Google Forms. Maybe you haven't made Google calls them a quiz, an assessment out of it. So we'll walk you through how to do some of that. To begin with, before you start putting in questions and whatnot, you're going to want to edit the settings for this to make it an assessment, a quiz. So the little sprocket that's up here in the right-hand corner next to the send button, click on that sprocket and you get these settings. And you have some choices. The first one says collect email addresses. You're going to, in my experience, you're going to want to do this. You could, in your assessment, say, please put in your name, put in your class period and stuff like that. But in my experience, I run into a couple of things. One, they forget to put in their name. Two, they sometimes put in their nickname or a shortened version of their name, or they use their initials, and then I have a hard time figuring out where they are in the gradebook. This might not be such a problem in elementary if you have 25 students for the whole day, but at high school where you got 5 classes coming through of 25, 28, 30 kids apiece, it's too many to figure out who's who. So I always check the box that says collect email address. The next one down says response receipts. This is optional. If you check this box, once they click submit, they'll get an email that shows them that they've submitted and stuff like that. So you might want that, you might not. I haven't really used it when I've done assessments. Below that, it says restrict to users in the Washougal SD domain. That's a good one to have checked. I've always checked it, so I've never had somebody from the outside world somehow get into my assessment, but it's a good idea in any case. If this is an assessment of an individual student, each individual student, you're going to want to limit them to one response. If you're doing some kind of a survey and you want to let them submit multiple responses, you certainly can. But if this is an assessment of learning, you probably want to limit it to a single response. Down below that, however, you can choose to let them edit it after they submit. So if this is a formative assessment that you want them to be able to go back and resubmit, work on some more, fix things that they got wrong, you can let them edit it after they submit, and they will be able to do that. If this is more of a summative assessment and you want, as soon as they've turned it in, that's it, they can't go back and mess with it until after you've scored it and whatnot, then you would want to leave that box unchecked. So for a homework assignment, I usually check that box. They can go back and refix it as many times as they want. For a test, that box would be checked, would be unchecked, so that once they submit, that's it. And then the second checkbox says see summary of charts and text responses. I've not really messed with that one. This would be, again, after they submit it, they would get an email, or they would get a screen that shows them a summary of their responses and whatnot. So that one's optional, and you can play with it and see if you like it or not. Most important, however, is this third tab over here, the one that says quizzes. If we don't make this a quiz, then Google will not treat it as a quiz. So on this screen, there's a switch right here. By default, it's normally off. I'd already been into this one, so I switched it on. But when you switch this on, everything below there goes from being grayed out to being editable. So when I turn that on, I can choose things like locked mode on Chromebooks. So this, to me, is a huge advantage, and the number one reason I have used Google Forms for certain assessments as opposed to Skyward. So for Skyward, the big advantage was the grade goes straight into the grade book and it's auto-scored. For Google Forms, this locked mode is the big reason. Now, not being in an in-class situation, if I put it into locked mode, and again, locked mode only works on Chromebooks. If you're on an iPad, it's not going to help you. But locked mode only really helps if they don't have access to other devices. If a student is sitting at home and I, as the teacher, turn on locked mode for my test, and I think, aha, they won't be able to surf the web and look for answers, all they have to do is reach over and grab their phone, and they can look up anything they want. Or they can phone a friend, or they can have another computer next to them. I mean, so in the distance learning model, I'm not so sure the locked mode is going to be a huge deal, but it's there. What's that?
You might as well.
Yeah,
Most of them probably won't think.
That's true. You might as well. And again, it might be something that for a summative assessment you want enabled, and for a formative assessment like a homework assignment, maybe not so much. Take your pick.
At least it makes it harder on them to
Yeah. All right, so below that, it says release grade. When do you want them to be able to see their grade? So you can have it immediately after they submit. It will auto-score as long as you have auto-scoring type questions. Again, extended response, essay responses won't auto-score. But multiple choice, true, false kind of stuff will. You can choose to have it later after manual. So after you look at it and you click the button, then they will be able to see it. Again, depends on what type of assessment you're doing. The bottom three checkboxes control what they see when they look at their grade and their test. So you can check to see checkbox so they can see their missed questions, the ones that they got wrong. It'll tell them that they got the question wrong. The next box will tell them what the correct answer is. So if you want them to see they got it wrong, but not necessarily what the answer is, because you want them to keep working on it and search for those answers, you can leave the second one, correct answers, unchecked. And then the point values, how many points are assigned to a question. I've never had a situation where I didn't want my students to see how much a question was worth, but you may have a reason to not show that. That's up to you. In any case, adjust those as you see fit and click save. Now notice, because I made it a quiz, this showed up on the question, the answer key. That answer key is not there unless you've set it to be a quiz. So that's why I recommend going into the settings first, and then you'll be able to put in correct answers as you go along. So types of questions. Here's another win for Google Forms. There are more types of questions, more flexibility in terms of the types of questions that you can do. I'm not going to go through all of these, but you can see them there, and you can play with them a little bit. One that I want to highlight outside of like typical multiple choice kind of stuff is this file upload one. If I click on file upload, it gives me this warning saying that yes, people will be able to upload things to your Google Drive. I would not worry about that because it puts it all in a single folder and nobody else can access it. They're just putting it into your drive, and your school district account comes with unlimited storage. So it's not like they're going to fill up your drive with a bunch of junk. If they do, good for them. You'll still have plenty of room because you have unlimited amounts of storage. So that's what this warning is for. just warning you that people put stuff in your drive. Once I click continue, you've got some parameters here that you can set as to what types of files they can upload. You can lock it to be, say you want them to make a quick video ASL class, perhaps you want them to sign something, or maybe in band you want them to play a piece of music or some scales or something like that, and you want to have them upload a video or an audio of that. You can limit what they can upload to those types of files. May or may not be important to limit it to those particular types of files, but you can. Maximum number of files, hey, each person gets to upload one, okay? Or maybe you want to, give them 10. It's up to you. Maximum file size. This, unless you're really sure how big the files are going to be, I would probably set it to be much bigger than necessary. If it's going to be like a one-page doc, Google Doc or a Word document or something like that, or a PDF, 10 megabytes is big. It's plenty. But if it's going to be a video file, 10 megabytes is really not very much, even for a short one. So down here it says this form can accept up to 1 gigabytes of files. You can change that. And if I click change down here, and now it says maximum size of all files uploaded. So all of them together from all of your students can take up this much space. I can go up to a whole terabyte of space, which would be way more than enough for anything. You're talking about huge database size files at that point. So think about it a little bit. Make sure you give them enough space, and don't worry about eating up too much space in your drive. You have unlimited space. So I kind of like that that option, especially for distance learning. If you're having them submit a quick video or an audio file or something like that, a good way to get that interaction that you have a hard time getting right now with the distance learning model. Another little trick, if you're doing an assessment that like a summative assessment, and you want to control when they can get into the assessment. You don't want them to be able to do it all the time, but you want them to be able to take it between, say, 10 and 11 in the morning on a given day. So here's what I do. I make this first question a short answer. In the question box, I say, please enter the code. And it already knows that I'm asking for a number, which is kind of creepy because Google reads the text there. But this is response validation. This line right here is response validation. If it doesn't show up automatically, then you can make it show up by going to the three buttons, the three dots down here, and choosing response validation. So I tell it here whether it's a number it's looking for, some text, a certain length, or regular expression. I'm going to go with number because it's easy. It's going to make sure that it not is just a number, but is equal to. See, is that the one I want? Yeah, equal to. And then I'm going to give it the number. And I like phone numbers because I can remember 7-digit phone numbers. So I'm going to choose a phone number, one that I can remember. And then the error text, I say, enter the correct code. So if they get the wrong number in there, it tells them enter the correct code. This validation means that it's going to look to see what they type in. Does it match this? And if I make it required, then they have to type in the right one before they can go on to the next section. So I make this question its own section. After I've typed that in, this little double bar right here adds a section. Notice the code is separated from the next question, right? The next section. And at the bottom of this section, underneath the code, it says continue to next section. If I have lots of sections, I can choose which section to go to, but I'm just going to have it go to the next one. So let me show you what this looks like on the student side when they go to do the assessment. So they get this page. All they see is this particular page. If they type in the wrong code, and they click next, they get the error message. Please enter the right code, the correct code. If they type in the correct one, then it lets them go to the next page, which I haven't put any more questions, but then they could continue on with the assessment. So because they need the code, you can control when they get into it by when you give them the code. In an in-class situation, I would write this up on the board at the beginning of the assessment, and they would type it in and go ahead. If you're not in class, you're not going to have the code, you can't get into the assessment. At home situation, you can give them the code in a Zoom meeting, let's say, and that lets them start the assessment. And then if you assign this through Google Classroom, you can put a due date and time on the back end of it. So when it's due by. That due date and time won't prohibit them from turning it in, but it will mark it as late if they turn it in after that time. So this gives you a testing time window if for some reason you need to limit the window of time that they have to work on this. So there's an option for that. Let me go back to the question types and stuff again. A couple more little things. You can insert a picture with this button here. It'll let you choose. You can search the web or upload one. So you can insert an image to go along with your question. I like to also use the copy, duplicate button here. So if I'm making multiple choice questions, okay, I've got some options there, right? And I want to make it required. Not just the code required, but questions required. Why would I make the questions required? Because if I don't make them required, I find that students will skip questions. And especially if you're doing multiple choice or true false, I want them to answer every question with their best guess, even if they don't know it. But other times you may want to let them skip a question, so your choice. But I like the required one. If I duplicate this, it copies the whole question and everything, and all I have to do, if I'm making the same type of question over and over again, all I have to do is change the question, change the answers, and then make sure I adjust the answer key for the new correct answer. So that makes it a little faster using that duplicate button there. All right, so let's see. I think I've covered most of it. Question types. Oh, important thing for Google Forms. One other big advantage. You can edit questions and correct answers while they're taking the test, and it will update live on their screen. They don't even have to refresh the page or anything like that. It will fix it right then and there. If you make a mistake in marking, like you marked the wrong correct answer, if you go through and fix that, it's a lot easier in Google Forms than it is in Classroom, in Skyward. So that's an advantage for it. If you assign a Google form through Google Classroom, it keeps track of when they submitted it, and you can set a due date and time. I mentioned that before, so you can see if they turned it in after that time or late. If you want to keep students out of the assessment after the time, all you have to do is go in and change the code at the beginning of the assessment, so they won't be able to get back into it. It won't kick them out, but they won't be able to get back into it unless they know the new correct code. So that's the last couple of things there. Let me see if we've got any kind of questions going on here. Let's see. Jason has one. It says, is that code option the way that people are building online escape rooms? Absolutely. I could do a whole session on online escape rooms and whatnot. There's a bunch of them out there. If you're not sure what we're talking about here, just go to Google and search, Google Forms escape rooms. There's a whole, maybe I'll email this out to people. There's a whole forum with people that have made educational escape room type activities that you can use as templates. I've made a couple for my classes. Students absolutely love them. So if I can make one for physics, I'm sure you can make them for social studies and English, probably easier than my physics topics. They're fun stuff. But yes, the code option with the response validation is absolutely the way that they're making those digital escape rooms. Yep. Any other questions we got going out there? Otherwise, I think we're probably running out of time here for today. I'll take a minute here and remind folks, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, be a good idea to do that. You'll get notifications when new things get posted. I am making some more videos all the time, trying to get those up as quickly as I can in between teaching classes and doing other things. Also, if you do have questions about other stuff or a little more in depth, maybe you get into making one of these Google Forms, you get stuck or whatever, don't be afraid to shoot me an email, or we can hook up on Zoom and I can help you with that. Be happy to do that. So don't be afraid to hit the subscribe button. That thumbs up like button helps us out a lot with the YouTube statistics and whatnot. So good luck to you folks. Hopefully you give this a try, and I'd like to know how you do at it. One more question I'm being told. Let's see. Marcy says, are we able to add new assignments to Skyward at this time? I'm going to assume that you're asking about in terms of, can you make a template for an assignment? Yes. If you're asking about putting scores in the gradebook, I have not heard that. So I don't think so yet, but we might find out more at our staff meeting tomorrow. So hopefully that answers your question, whichever way you meant it. All right, folks, we're going to call it quits at this time. Again, don't be afraid to reach out if you've got questions. I'm happy to help. Have a good day.